Welcome to my show. A guest here. His name is Linwood Noble. Mr. Linwood, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking.
All right, Mr. Linwood, and also thank you so much for the time and the opportunity. Firstly, you are the founder of the Noble Management LLC. You are also a master accreditation consultant. Can you please, Mr. Linwood, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mr. Linwood?
Yes, I got into accreditation kind of on. It was kind of a mistake. I was in the world of admissions for a long time, and I'd been in that for about 8 or 9 years, and then I was doing admissions at a local. It was a commercial dive school. It was the world's largest commercial dive school, and the director of compliance got fired, and I was the only one that had a master's degree in education. So they promoted me to that position. They and I kind of fumbled my way through it for the first year or so, but I just fell in love with the policies and procedures. So I've been in that for the last 22 years and absolutely just never looked back and loved it and started my own thing at noblemanagement.pro, like you were saying earlier. And I just, like I said, I never looked back. I love talking about the boring policy stuff of education.
Exactly. Education is the pillar of the world we found ourselves. Through education, that is why we have a lot of things that are actually being built in our time today, and also the improvement of the world as well. And regarding the experience you've had as a consultant, I would like to know if you've written any book or if you are planning to write any book in the coming future, Mr. Linwood.
Yes, I just released my first book. It's called The Human Side of Accreditation, and it digs into the human toll, that the stress and the risk that people take when going through these accreditation audits and school audits and everything, because it that's never looked at in my view. It's either you pass the accreditation audit or you don't. So the human side of accreditation, it's available on Amazon. It's on my website, Noble Management. But yeah, it's a human look into the teams aspect of every college that gets put through that stress, and I try to help people minimize that stress and minimize risk within the educational field. And my tagline is always, I'd rather you be ready than having to always get ready. So just 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 learning how to do all that, and through my system that I offer and everything.
Exactly. I'm so glad that you actually brought out the struggles when it comes to getting through all this academic board and things like that. It also make people to also know the step they can also take to also make sure they actually do not be in the position whereby their stress and also every single effort they've put into the work isn't in vain, and also put them through in the right way as well. And also, Mr. Linwood, I would just like to drive to listeners who are working in education. What does academic excellence, what do you think it truly mean when it's built through strong structure and accountability rather than pressure alone, Mr. Linwood?
Right. Academic excellence to me is not created simply by just demanding it. Um, it's created when an institution gives students, faculty, structure, the structure that they need to consistently, meet those obligations. Because if you're forcing it, it just causes, like I said, it causes a lot of stress, causes a lot of miscommunication, because academic excellence is it's a uh, it just means to have clear expectations of moving forward. And I think that gets lost a lot of time, whether it's through human opinion, whether it's through the wrong interpretation of policy. um, Academic excellence to me is just, it's about making sure that the institution keeps the promises it made to the student in the beginning.
Which is very much important. The promise is very important in academic excellence of a student, and it also plays a very profound and huge role in their well-being and in everything they do as well, because that gives them the motive and also motivate others who are also coming as well. So that perspective really play a very huge and essential role, most especially in the education system. And that is why I would like to ask, how do you think schools, an institution, can try to begin to see structure not as a restriction, but as something that protects the quality, consistency, and student success, Mr. Linwood?
Yeah, great question. Um, institutions need to really examine not only their mission statement, but they need to examine their catalog, their website, and everything. Because when you first sign up for accreditation or you apply for accreditation, the accrediting body, whatever that is, whether it's regional or national, they don't give you specific policies that you have to implement. They give you a guideline. They say, okay, if you're going to implement this specific policy, it has to be fair and equal. Um, so then it's up to the institution to say, okay, we're going to do it this way, this way, this way, this way. Is it fair and equal? And that's how the guidelines are developed. So, I think along with just just really getting into what it looks like as far as from the standpoint of when they started, because that mission usually gets lost in there, like I said, through human interpretation and human error, human laziness. People will often go around things specific to policy and everything. But I think it's just a good way to get back to the basics and really find out what started this institution in the first place and how they can follow those guidelines.
And that is very much true, Mr. Linwood. Going back to the root plays a very powerful role. Sometimes when an academic board or a structure is being built, it actually gets, when it gets to a point, it looks as if they get tired of it. And that is why some institution rather, actually lag behind on the lot of structure that they usually do. And it affects the productivity of the student, the outcome of the student, and the kind of student that are also producing out there in the society. So
Mhm.
actually trying to maintain that structure and remembering the roots. What is our roots? What actually brought us to this perspective? What actually made us to build out the structure? And we actually continue to stay motivated in those perspectives. I sincerely appreciate you for that wonderful insight, Mr. Linwood. And also, I would like to drive to the point of leaders who want stronger academic results. How do you think they can try to balance accountability with support so that excellence is pursued without creating fear or burnout along the way, Mr. Linwood?
Yeah, wow, great question. That really depends on the institution, and I'll give you a for instance that I ran into back in 2000, I think it was 15. One of my lead instructors, I was the director of compliance of that commercial dive school that I was talking about earlier. They since have closed, but one of my lead instructor came to me and he's like, "Look, the students' overall um, final test scores are gradually going down over the last 3 months." And I said, "Okay, I'll take a look at it and see what's going on." So I looked into it, and it's really about the balance, and you got to figure out what type of student you have too. With the commercial diving academy that I was working at, we had mostly felons, and we also had veterans. We also had a lot of different types of people in that specific realm. So what was happening is what I did was I looked at all the uh, final test scores over the last 12 months. Then I was kind of like searching through haphazardly, and I ran into my instructor's surveys for the last 12 months. And I can see that my instructor's surveys were going up as far as they were being liked more, but the actual test scores were going down. So I was like, that's a little weird. So I started digging into it and I put it on a graph. Okay. So I took the last 12 months of student performance with the final exam and the last 12 months of instructor performance with each class that graduated. And it was abundantly clear that they were thinking that all of our instructors were friends. Therefore, they loved them more, they liked them more, gave them better grades, gave them better scores, gave them better surveys, but they didn't respect them enough to listen to them to where they would get better scores on the test. So I implemented, I mean, went in and did some training with the instructors. I'm like, look, we have to separate that realm between student and instructor. You guys can't be going out drinking with them. You can't, hang out with them. These are your students, and we have to treat them that way. So we devised a line that the instructors could only could abide by, and they our school was it was not real militant, but our students responded really well to standing in line at attention and parade rest in the morning and saluting the flag, and they really responded to that. So it was more of like a militant feel. And yeah, and after that, 12 months later, our scores started going way up. The instructor survey started going down because they respected them more. They didn't like them as much, but they started respecting them more, which I would take that trade off any day. So, you know, moral of the story, just be creative. Look into what's going on. And if it has to hurt your instructor's, likability with the survey, then that's what it is. But it's really about the student. So long story short, I was just creative and I ran into that and it worked really well and I had a lot of fun with it.
I sincerely appreciate you for this very, very powerful insight, Mr. Linwood, because sometimes, as an instructor, one has to try his or her best to think that actually building the sense of relationship and stuff with students actually plays a very huge role for them to also be aligned and also do everything that is meant to be done in the right way. But sometimes it is not the case. And actually giving that sense of stewardness and also making them to understand that I am the instructor and you are the student, the relationship could be damaged or things like that. But the qualities and what is meant to be done, we actually shows the sense of reflection that the instructor needs as well. So from the bottom of my heart, Mr. Linwood, I honestly appreciate you for that wonderful insight. And also, Mr. Linwood, I would like to drive to people on also academic. Why you think academic excellence could be often less about individual effort alone and more about creating environments where people can consistently do their best work, Mr. Linwood?
It's, when you get into a different environment, as people in general, if you're standing in a church, you act differently than if you're standing in a concert or, so atmosphere has 100% to do with how a student is going to respond. So if, lots of people are followers, lots of people are leaders, and I think if the ultimate leaders treat their people with respect, but create that 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 separation between student and instructor, and really dig into what the student's going through if something's wrong or if something's not right. I think caring about your students one on one and really just keeping that open door and being like, if you ever want to come up and talk for 20, 30 minutes, an hour, I'm here. Doesn't have to be about school, doesn't have to be about this or that or whatever. It could be about something that's bothering you. And I think as long as you take that human approach and you create the environment, whether it's good for the instructor or whether it's good for the student, if you create that environment, I think your students will flourish for sure, and they'll create their own academic excellence.
Exactly. Environment actually plays a very huge and profound role as well. And actually being a open door as an instructor, being an open door make a student to feel relaxed, feel energized, and also feel less more secured when he or she is actually coming around for some activities because he or she understand that this instructor or the 100% understand what it aligns to be having emotions regarding situations and other things as well, and is also or he or she is also an open book as well that can actually be a source of impact and also energy because who knows what the student is passing through or other things as well. But having the sense of I think someone actually understand what I am going through and things like that plays a very, very huge role in the student and also other things as well. I sincerely appreciate you for the wonderful insights. And also, Mr. Linwood, for schools recovering from inconsistency and compliance challenges, because there are a lot of damage that have been done in the institution, and they're still trying their best to recover from those inconsistency, those compliance challenges. What do you think are some of the most important first steps towards rebuilding a structure that support long-term excellence, Mr. Linwood?
It really it really comes down to the team. Uh, when I was working at the Commercial Diving Academy, the culture was more of a you'll do this and you'll like it kind of fear that was created. And when the owner came by, he created a lot of that fear. He created a lot of drama, and you know I internalized a lot of that drama, so I wouldn't bring it onto the student or the staff. But I think if you create a culture of open door, true, just kind of talking about it and getting it out. If you create that non-stressful culture that is backed by policy and is an everyday occurrence, because, like I said, you don't want to always try to get ready for the next audit coming up. You always want to be ready, and it's not hard to follow rules. It's hard to remember them all. So I think putting policy down where everybody can to review it. If they have a question on the phone with a student, just keeping that open door, that open conversation policy, and creating a non-stressful atmosphere will create a so much better college. And I've seen it go both ways, and I've seen it go drastically, horribly wrong with a bunch of students after I left. With with the commercial diving field, it's very life threatening sometimes. It's very dangerous field, and a lot of the policies that I put in place were policies that I created to straight out save people's lives. And one of the policies that I had was if you went out drinking the night before, you could not do a commercial dive. You could not drink and do a commercial dive after, like in the morning, real early in the morning. So we would alcohol breath test people on dive site. Some would fail, some would pass, whatever. Those who fail, they couldn't dive that day. Well, they did away with that rule when I left. They stopped doing that because it was expensive to keep testing people every morning. But the cost of a human life is much more, of course. But um, so they stopped doing that, and then six divers had ended up dying in the water um, about a year and a half after I left because they did away with that policy. So it was very sad, but it was a realization that I had an actual effect on people's lives, and that's when I really just started to really get serious about it and take it seriously, and then start Noble Management. But yeah.
I sincerely appreciate it. And also, you made the profound point earlier. Culture and also the environment plays a very powerful role in everything a student have to do to make it a successful one. In regards to also the question I asked earlier, in regards to consistency and challenging, how schools can recover from it. Some institution has actually, as we said earlier, maintained the structure, but due to the lags and other things, has actually made them fade. And which is one of the example of what you said about six people died and stuff like that. But as institution and also as an academic board, a lot of things are also needed to be done actually to build the accountability of the student, the instructor, and also other areas that can also help them grow as well. And you've mentioned in the structure, the culture, the environment, all those things play a very huge and also powerful role in a long-term excellence of a student. And also, Mr. Linwood, there is also a question I normally ask during the end of the show. From our forefathers, from our ancestors, there are a lot of beautiful things that do exist during our forefathers' time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, Mr. Linwood, what do you think that thing will be, Mr. Linwood?
I think I would bring back, um, my father was a, or he is, back when, I was working with him, because I used to work with him for, during, he had a construction company. And one of the things that he used to drive home was, at, and I would get sick of it because I was so young, I didn't understand, but it was the, it was two factors. It was one, common sense. Use your common sense. If it feels bad, investigate it. Stop. Don't move forward. Look into it. So common sense was one, and hard work was the other. I mean, my dad was an amazing, or is an amazing, hardworking person that, um, he would do anything for his family. So I think, from the past that we're missing now is that deep intrinsic value of working hard, doing the right thing, you know, not because somebody's, watching us on social media or whatever, but just hardworking, common sense. And I talked to him about, being in the, I talked like he was in the past, or he had, but he's, since then he's retired, and, we talk a lot still, but I don't work with him anymore. So, um, back then he just used to push accountability, working hard, and just common sense. Just use your common sense. Um, so I wish I would I would like to bring that back. Common sense and hard work.
Exactly. The world that we find ourselves today seems like an easy world, and it doesn't look that way. Even despite the technology and also the growth that we have that made things more easier, now we have the artificial intelligence. It doesn't feel like it's also easier. It also requires a lot of hard work and also most especially common sense. Common sense is very, very missing in our time today, to be honest with you, Mr. Linwood. It is very missing. Just something simple as ABC, people can drag it for 2 years in our time today. I think people really have time for things that are really unnecessary, and having the sense of common sense plays a very huge role. We definitely hope it is something that is built within our system and also our world as well. Because as you've said, policy, culture, environment actually plays all these roles to actually include and install these things in people's life. And also, Mr. Linwood, I want to use this opportunity to thank you for the time, the opportunity, the patience as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Linwood.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate your time, and
Absolutely true. I completely agree with you. Have a wonderful day, Mr. Linwood. Bye bye.